Tonight is Venus, and all of you have your information, I hope, and I will, yes, but you know astrology, so you're good. I'll help you out. And we're going to be looking at all of that tonight. But I just want to start with sort of a basic kind of Venus world to start out with that. Just last weekend, or the weekend before, I went to the Sequoias. Andrew surprised me, and we all, Kate and Andrew and I, all went off to the Sequoias. And I don't know if you've been to the Sequoias or the Redwoods, but they are pretty much astounding, you know. And I've only been a few times, but the times that I have been, I walk in and I see the first Sequoia and I just start to cry. I mean, this time we're driving through and I'm like, you know, out the side window, you know, and Andrew's driving, you know, I don't know how aware he is of it or not, but you know, within the first tree, I'm like, okay, you know, I'm crying. Because I find them so beautiful and so instructive through their beauty. I also find them very Saturnine, very Saturn. I think they're a combination of Saturn and Venus, actually, because I think that, of course, the Saturn is purpose over time, and you know their structure, their strength, their solidity, their groundedness. You know, it's quite beautiful. But the Venus part of it is, come on in, come up front, Kim. The Venus part of it is their refined beauty. Their refined beauty. And Venus is all about the redemptive power of beauty. And it's all about the regenerative power of beauty. And you know, the glyph for Venus, all you know, is just the sign that we know as the feminine sign, right? And this is the cross of matter, and this is the spirit circle. And Venus is about the process of refining and lifting matter to its essence, you know. It's about illumination. You know, we think about a lot with Venus, oh, love, romantic love, and of course we'll talk about that, you know. But it's a much bigger picture. It's if I were going to talk about what Venus is at its essence, it's the illumined mind. It's heart and head. It's true wisdom. And if you were going to associate, you can associate the planets with the chakras. If you're going to associate it with a chakra, it's the Ajna center. So it's actually the intuitive light. It's the third eye of the bull that awakens. It's where we look at our world and we separate the wheat from the chaff, and we say, this is a value, this is a value, this needs to be honored, this isn't a value, you know? And if I were going to ask you, if I were going to say to you, you know, what is your Sequoia experience? What is your Redwood experience? Or what place in you brings up that breath, that beauty, that emotional response for no apparent reason, you know? I'm sure that you all have that. And that for you speaks of Venus in your life and in your chart, where it is in, what house it's in, what sign it's in, what brings that kind of beauty and refinement and love to you, and how you feel towards it. Or if I were going to ask you to think of a person that you just love unconditionally, or, you know, even if I were going to say a person that you have an issue with, both of those could be Venus issues. Because the Venus issue of loving that person, when you love someone unconditionally, they are bringing out the best in you. Venus brings out the best in us. Our Venus placement is a beautiful placement because it is a huge indication of where we can give our love and make a difference in the world, okay? Where we can actually say, I have a gift here, I have a passion here, I have a desire here, I have a leaning here, a draw here. And if I just follow that, then I might actually end up doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I might end up lighting up someone's life, the world, whatever it is. You know, there's a difference between romance addiction, right, and loving impersonally and purely. And if we get caught up in who's going to love me, how am I going to love them? Do I love them? Do they love me? Am I going to ever be loved? If we stay in this place, then we're never, you know, I'm going to be dramatic, then we have a harder time finding the loving impulse that wants to be let loose in the world. So we need to think of Venus in a bigger way, do you know? So, I mean, I could say, I'll give you an example, you know. If I were gonna, my Venus is in Taurus, all right? Venus in Taurus can be very sensual and very much loving the senses and, you know, give me a glass of wine, put me in a nice bed with lots of count sheets, give me chocolate, take me to nice restaurants, wine me, dine me, let me sit at home all day. You know, it's like, right? This kind of thing. Well, if I were going to do that all day and stay, and it probably would be good for me to do that for a while, actually, when I think about it. But one could get stuck there. One could get stuck there instead of saying, all right, well, Venus in Taurus, actually, Taurus is about illumination. It is about the path of light, and is about wisdom, and is about like extracting light from experiences, right? So I could get all comfortable and be like, okay, I'm all taken care of, you know, I'm just gonna sit in my chair, you know, let's say it's not even me, I'm gonna sit in my chair and watch my remote and eat my, you know, popcorn and chocolate peanut butter sundaes, you know, and just end up being kind of Venus and Taurus pleasured out versus, but wait a second, what is that path? What is that light? What is that book where I want to read about? What is that sensual experience that is transcendent? What, you know, Venus and Taurus going to the sequoias, that's a great way to do it, you know, because it's smells, sounds, sights, and yet it's also, it lifts you to think about different things and to think about how you think about light in your life. Does that make sense? So that journey, you know, you can choose with your sign where you get stuck or where you move forward. Venus is beauty, Venus is love, Venus is refinement. Venus is to the earth as the soul is to the body. Okay? Venus is our sister planet. In the Ageless Wisdom teaching, Venus is considered a sacred planet. In other words, it has evolved more than we have, all right? And it is in many ways wiser. It is the soul to the Earth's body. And so we look to Venus in our chart to say, where is our soul calling? And where is our soul direction? And where can we harvest the greatest soul experiences? So it's really, like I was thinking about Joseph Campbell, who said, follow your bliss. He could have said, follow your Venus. Do you know, I mean, it's like that. Follow, I think it's from Celestine Prophecy, it's like, follow the most beautiful path, you know, also. It's like, whatever is beauty for you. And of course, you always have to check yourself too, and you have to look at it from the observer, like, okay, what's leading me here? Is that really beautiful, or is it just pretty? Is it just really fancied up, and, you know, is it real beauty? You know, like if you have Venus in Scorpio, sometimes beauty doesn't look pretty. Do you know? Sometimes it looks really raw and transformative and ugly and scary and dark and, you know, all of those things. But the beauty is fierce and the beauty is underneath, do you know? And we're in an age when Venus is required, right? I mean, we've all talked about it in different ways. We've talked about it in the, you know, the feminine energy has to return. The last time the feminine energy and the masculine energy were really on par was in the, like, Crete, 3,600 years ago. And I don't know how many of you know much about Crete, but apparently in that civilization, there was a true equality. There was a true harmony. It's said that there were no wars for thousands of years. They had a flourishing copper trade. There was no indication of any, you know, sexism or any inequality, and they all looked, you know, were beautiful and sexy and gorgeous, and there was lots of pleasurable experiences going on, and yet there was a total equality. And then Crete was invaded, and Venus disappears in a way. That's the last time the matriarch, or it wasn't a matriarchy, but the feminine energy was truly honored. And now we're in a time I think in '94 there was some really unusual event with Venus that hadn't happened in 3,600 years. So starting in '94, this reemergence of Venus, this coming back, this hello, I need to speak to. And Carolyn Casey says something really funny about Venus and Gemini. People with Venus and Gemini, she says that it's Venus with a mouth because she finally needs to be heard after all these years. Like I have something to say, right? So with Venus, there is nothing that cannot be solved. And in our world, there is no conflict that cannot be solved. I'm doing all these double negatives. Venus can solve any conflict. Venus can pull together any polarity. And this is the other key, right? Mercury goes, oh, look at that and look at that. Isn't that cool? Here, 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 here. Venus goes, look at that, you meet that. Venus relates. Venus says, I want to meet you. Venus says, you guys should talk. Venus says, let's, my acupuncturist today said he just got two groups of kids this summer to come, Israelis and Arabs, all 16 years old. You talk to you, totally Venusian. For 2 weeks they're dialoguing. So Venus wants to relate things and wants to synthesize things and does not want polarity. It goes, let's fuse, let's mold, let's meld. It's all about that's all about what happens in the presence of love. Okay? And I've given you handouts actually that I'm not going to directly refer to, but in this first section about what Venus says, Venus says we must harmonize. Venus says I resolve duality. Venus says beauty is redemptive and regenerative. These will remind you of what we're talking about tonight. And will remind you when you start to think about your own Venus, all right? Now, let's just talk for a second about where Venus is, in what element Venus is in our chart. So raise your hand if you have Venus in Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you guys are look around. Do that again and look around. Because you guys are the fiery Venuses, okay? These are the passionate Venuses. These are, Venus in Aries is Athena, who sprung from Zeus's head fully armed. It's like, it's very passionate and dynamic and let's go for it. Venus in Aries says, I have a great idea. Venus in Leo says, look at me. And Venus in Sagittarius says, let's go traveling. Do you know? Okay, I mean, on a very simple layer, that's what they say. So they're very exciting, passionate, dramatic. They want to love in that way, and they want to be loved in that way. So if your lover has got, Venus and that, men, if your Venuses are in a fire sign for the most part, you want a woman that has got some fire to her, that's got some gumption, that's got some, and in general, in heterosexual relationships, you could say that you could look to, for men, you could look to Venus, women, you could look to Mars, obviously. In homosexual relationships, you could look to Venus, you could look to Mars, the other way around, right? So, Venus in fire, dramatic.